All right, this is show number 92, recorded on September 17th, and today we have special guest Trevor Dayley. Trevor, how are you doing?
Doing real good. Happy to be here.
Yeah, Trevor we're still all smiles because Trevor was just telling us a joke about how he almost got kicked out of Disney. We'll save that for another day. But
Yeah.
Trevor, also want to say thank you for joining our Facebook group. Trevor joined today, and you know, I understand Trevor's going to be a busy guy, so he may not be able to post all the time. But thanks for joining in. We have a great group out there, and every month we have a photo challenge. Last month's winner was Jeannie Kessler. Hopefully I said your name right. Habitual bad name sayer, whatever you say that. Pronouncer. Bad name pronouncer. And she wins a $25 Amazon gift certificate that will be coming shortly. And last month was fire, which was very difficult. A lot of people had trouble with that. This month is reflection, so hopefully we'll be getting a lot of good entries on reflection. If you're not a member of our Facebook group, come out and join. It's real easy, just Facebook.com/group/jpeg2RAW, and then ask to join, and we'll let you in. And Trevor comes to us, we always ask our people, the people who listen to the show and guests too, hey, who should we have on the show? And Trevor was one of the people that was highly recommended. I see one of the ladies who recommended you out there in chat right now, Nikki. She pointed us in your direction. Yeah, so Trevor, thank you for coming. And tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into weddings.
No, and I got to say, I'm actually quite excited to be in the Facebook group as well. I know there's a lot of groups out there, and we all seem to be busy with so much stuff going on, but I just got to peek in there just briefly, and I could already see there's a lot of talented photographers, and I would love to participate in some contests as well. I think there's no, and quite honestly, I think there's no better way to practice your art but participate in little contests like that, because then you go out and you have like an assignment, like a homework assignment, and you go out and you try to fulfill that. So I'm excited for that as well. So I hope you guys don't mind.
Oh, no. We have a good mix of people who are pros like yourself, a number of wedding pros, a number of people who are pros in other aspects of photography, and then we have people who are beginners, and we have people who are advanced amateurs. So a wide spectrum of things. Ryan Denise Gotcher, who was on the show, they're out in that group. I saw Mike Coletta also, who was a former guest. Liked the fact that you came in. So there's a lot of people, and since it's a community vote, everybody's kind of on the same playing field. So it's not always the pros who win. So don't let that discourage you. Yeah.
No. I know there's a lot of talented people out there. But yeah, and by the way, Ryan and Denise, I do know them. They're right here in the Valley. I'm located here in Arizona. Ryan and Denise are just a fantastic couple. I really like them a lot. Fortunately, we got a great group of photographers out here in Arizona, and we tend to do a lot of things together. We believe in community, so we actually get together. We do kickball, and nice. last week a group of us got together. We went to this trampoline world that was kind of indoors. It was like trampolines, one right after another, and just brought our families out to jump around. And so I think it's important, no matter if it's on a Facebook group or if it's in your local community, I think it's important that you find those photographers, and instead of looking at them as competition, look at them as friends, and you'd be surprised at the benefits of having those friendships. So yeah, Ryan and Denise are great people, so I'm glad you had them on.
Yeah, and the fact you're coming on and sharing here, and we'll talk about it a little bit later, you do so many posts over at F-Stoppers. The fact that so many great photographers like yourself are willing to share with other photographers. I mean, in a lot of industries, people are so, Coke is not going to share their formula with Pepsi, and vice versa. I mean, they're very closed-lipped about that kind of stuff. But it seems that, especially the newer photographers, there may be still some holdouts. But it's great that you are so willing to share your knowledge with other photographers.
And I appreciate that, Mike. I got to say, I was one of those holdouts 3 years ago. I was one of those persons that thought, no, I don't want to give away any secrets because there's not enough business out there. And I actually read, there's a book that it was funny enough, he was actually my best friend in high school, but he went on to write a book, and I'm terrible, I can't even remember the name of it, but his name is Chris Heap. If you look him up on Amazon, Chris Heap is the author, H-E-A-P. But he wrote a book, and it's basically kind of a motivational book, and in that book there's a term that he used, scarcity complex. And it's basically how, when you have that complex, you kind of believe that there's a finite number of, business or resources and things like that out there. And, you want to hoard it to yourself. You don't want to give it to anyone else. And And in reality, we should be just the opposite and sharing our resources, sharing our knowledge. And when that kind of hit me, and I realized that I was that person that was trying to hoard everything and keep it to myself, and decided to change things up a little bit, my whole world changed, my business changed, and it just, relationships, the amount of relationships that I made with other photographers, and then the referrals they would give me, and wedding planners. I mean, it's amazing. So I would encourage anyone out there that might be still kind of that old school, keep all these secrets to yourself. I would consider looking deep into yourself and thinking, okay, what am I missing out on by not sharing? So I think you'll find that in the end, by sharing and helping others, it's good karma. It comes back to you.
Yeah, and you're basically saying that the market can be expanded, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, the overall market. So you don't necessarily have to carve up the same piece of pie. You can grow the piece of pie, and you all can still get a bigger piece.
Yeah, well, and I do weddings. That's what I specialize in, and there are more weddings to go around than we can even, all shoot if we tried. In other words, there's a lot of people that are having their wedding, and they really don't even know where to find a wedding photographer. So I think if we all help each other learn how to market ourselves and how to price ourselves and how to shoot better photos, it does nothing but make the industry even better. So.
Yeah.
Yep.
So how did you get into to weddings? Because you didn't start off your professional life in weddings, did you?
No, and it's I don't know if I'll ever have a professional life. I'm still kind of a kid at heart, but I actually, so right out of college, well, let me actually go back just a little bit further. Okay. My mom, she loved photography. It was something that she practiced a lot of, and she shot back in obviously the days of film. So I can't remember, the Canon F1 or something like that, and then she got the Canon AE1. Which is a real popular film camera, and she basically, that camera kind of became mine. I would use it all the time, and she'd buy me rolls of film whenever I wanted. So she allowed me to explore photography by just helping me and letting me use her camera, as much as I wanted. So I did that. The only award that I'm proud to announce that I've won in life, because I don't really like competitions, except for Amazon $25 gift cards. I will go for that. But I've never really submitted pictures to judges, for like WPPI or things like that. Although I might this year just for fun. But in the past I've never done it. So I always tell people I'm proud of the one award, which is in 8th grade. I won the Student Photographer of the Year award at Shepherd Junior High. So I have it hung up somewhere, but it's my it's my one award. So with that, I did photography throughout. And then when I went to college, I actually thought there's no way I can do photography and support a family. I just thought it was unrealistic. And so I went on and did finance for a while, did that for about 8 years. And from there, I realized that photography was something I missed in my life. So I picked up a camera again, started shooting a little bit. And I went and shot a wedding and absolutely loved it. I mean, just had a blast. That was actually for a cousin. And then in October 2009, I shot a wedding. I kind of call it my first real wedding. Now, I only got paid $300. I was supposed to get paid $800, but they shorted me $500. And
that's a heck of a short.
Yeah. No, my wife wasn't very happy about it.
I bet not.
But the nice thing about it was two things on that night. It was October 2009. One, I discovered that photography was what I wanted to do for a career. And two, I made an amazing relationship with a wedding coordinator that just loved the way I worked and loved how I had the bride and groom back on time, and just made sure that I worked as a team with everybody, that kind of stuff. And so from that point on, she started referring a lot of business to me. And in 2010, I told my wife, I said, look, babe, I said, when I get 20 weddings booked in 2010, I want to quit my day job. And I got to May, and I only had 5 weddings booked.
Oh, wow.
But I was just, because all I could think about was photography. I just did not want to do finance anymore at that point. Yeah. And so I told her, I said, I'm going to quit my day job. Don't tell any of our family or friends, because I didn't really want everyone scared for us. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. How people were like, oh no, you're crazy. I can't believe you're trying to make it as a photographer. But I quit my day job, didn't tell any family or friends. But I worked really hard and really hustled that year. And by the end of the year, I got about 25 weddings that I actually shot. And it was basically because I had a few good wedding coordinators that were just sending me weddings just 3 or 4 months out. And so I was able to book up my calendar completely, and it was an amazing year. And then last year I did, so let's see, that was 2010. 2011, I don't remember exactly how many I did. Last year I did 40, and this year I have 31.
Okay.
So.
And I think I read somewhere that you try and limit the number you do each year.
I do. I don't necessarily put a number. Like, I don't say like I'm only going to do 25 or 30, but I basically limit it just by the the time during the month. Because see here in Arizona, and I'm sure every state has this, but we have our wedding season, and so our wedding season is basically late February, March, April, early May, and then October, November, sometimes a little bit of September. So you basically got to get all your weddings kind of in those months. Fortunately, as a photographer, I have been able to travel in June, July, and August, which are my off months. I have been able to travel outside the state now and book some other additional weddings, so I can kind of free up some time in the fall and the spring and not book myself solid. But yeah, I'd say about 30 is probably enough for me every year.
Okay. Now going back to that first wedding, you that was exciting to you. You couldn't wait to do more. So you weren't nervous going into that first one?
That's a great question. I was nervous. I think sometimes when photographers go into a wedding, I think they kind of they get themselves too scared. They think about the things like, oh, this is the only time you can capture these photos.
Yeah.
And I get that, and I totally understand that. I kind of look at it as those what do you call it, the butterflies in your stomach, that nervousness. Mm-hmm. I don't mean to turn this into a religious devotional or anything, but I just kind of look at it as a way of God just saying, hey, you're doing something important, so just be on your A game. But I figure if you do the best you can, and there's always going to be mistakes, there's always going to be technical failures. You just got to make sure that you know how to back yourself up, or if you have another camera or things like that. But if you're going into it, doing the best you can, I don't think anyone can blame you. So.
Okay. And speaking of backup, you didn't start off as a second shooter. You went straight in as the main shooter, right?
I did, and I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I would say the good thing about it is that I didn't depend too much on somebody else's poses or things they say, stuff like that. However, I would say as a second shooter, there's so much to learn that you can pick up from people. I know, like for example, I tell second shooters when they come out with me, don't just look at like angles and camera, gear and what kind of lenses I'm using. That kind of stuff, it doesn't matter. I tell second shooters, I say pay attention to the things I say, how I form relationships with clients, or maybe the little things that I might do on the side that they wouldn't expect. I think those are the big things that really you can learn by second shooting. So that's what I would encourage people if you are to second shoot. I did second shoot one wedding. It was for this guy named John from Aquario Studio, and he no longer does photography. He was out in San Diego, or at least I know he sold his business. But I got to say, it was kind of embarrassing. He handed me a camera of his that was programmed to shoot infrared, black and white.
Okay.
So this was back in the days when they would tweak the sensor, so it would, instead of doing it in Photoshop, they would shoot it like that in camera.
Okay.
And he goes, hey Trevor, all you got to do is just overexpose your shots by about one stop. And I kind of walked away and I thought, what? Like, how do I? What kind of language is he speaking to me? I put the camera on automatic and shot away, and it was terrible. I mean, I look back. I remember when he put out a pictage gallery, and I looked inside there, and I was like, yeah, there's one of my photos. I was so stoked to see, one or two of my photos there. But in reality, I went into it totally unprepared. So, and I gotta say, there was one other time that I did second shoot. This is about 2 years into my career, and the first shooter put her camera on the ground, and there was an older lady shooting on my shoulder, and I didn't notice she was there. And so as I got my shot, I backed up. I kind of lifted myself up, and I hit the older lady, and she started falling back, and I freaked out. I went to go catch her. The guest went to go catch her, and in the process, I had to kind of step over her. And when I stepped over her, I kicked my first photographer's camera and broke the LCD screen.
Oh.
It was terrible. It was terrible. I felt so. I guess the moral of the story is I've second shot twice in my life now. And both times have been disaster experiences. So maybe it's a good thing that I'm not a second shooter, but I think it could be good for other people.
And that goes to a question. I'm going to probably mispronounce your name. Danielle? Maybe? Daniela. Out in chat ask, have you ever not been on your game? It sounds like both times your second shot, maybe. But as the main shooter, let's go with the main shooter.
Yeah.
With a wedding, I'm sure there's been times you didn't feel well. Stuff like that.
I've been extremely fortunate. My wife says I'm one of those persons that just is always pretty healthy. So I haven't really had situations where I haven't felt well. I did one time go into a well, I'm going to be real honest with you guys right now. I was going to try to call it a surgery, but it wasn't a surgery. I went in for a colonoscopy.
Okay.
So they're looking deep inside me, and I came out of there. And I was all drugged up, and I went to go do a shoot right after, and my doctors told me not to do it.
Right after? So from the doctor to the shoot?
It was about maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours.
That's still not enough time.
That's still close enough.
Yeah. Hey, I felt good. But I had somebody there as backup. I asked that person to come along and just back me up, and it was that one wasn't a wedding though. That was just a family shoot. But going back to the question, I've never really felt that I wasn't on. Well, excuse me. Let me rephrase that. I have felt that I wasn't on my game, but usually what it is it's just a mental thing. You get so caught up and you want to do a wedding like your last one that you just felt like you rocked out. And I'll come home, my wife will say, "Oh, how was the wedding?" And I'll be like, "Man, I just didn't feel like I hit it this time." And I've said this a lot of times. And then I start editing the photos, and I go, that wasn't so bad after all. So I think sometimes we're just harder on ourselves than we should be. But at the same time, being hard on ourselves helps us to be better each time. So it's probably so.
I always think my pictures are terrible, and a lot of my friends will say, "No, you take great pictures," and I'm like, to me, they're just terrible.
But
the vast majority of them.
I think that in a reflection that being critical of your own work was what, like you said, Trevor, is what pushed you to be better.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And the thing is, we look at great work all day long. I mean, as photographers, that's what we do. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of times we're comparing ourselves to our very best, and we're comparing ourselves to our friends' very best, and the photographers in that Facebook group's very best. And so it can be tough, and we look at our shots in the camera, or when we edit them, and we go, it's okay. But then we give them to our clients, and they're in cloud nine. They just absolutely love it. So I think as photographers, we just need to remember not to be so hard on ourselves sometimes.
Okay. Another question from chat. Karen asked, "What do you find the biggest challenge while you were shooting a wedding?"
Ooh, what do I find the biggest challenge? I would say the biggest challenge is. That's a great question. Honestly, I think the one thing that drives me the craziest, and I would say is probably the biggest challenge, is when I can't get people excited about a timeline. So in other words, if I have a timeline set up and I know the bride, I need to do shots at 3 o'clock or something, and she's just kind of like, not a big deal, or she's not like excited about that time to do photos. I would say that's one of the biggest challenges, because for me, I don't want to change somebody's day. I don't want to take them and I'm going to stress how important it is. But at the same time, if there's something else more important to them on that wedding day, then I will just capture whatever it is they're doing. If that's spending time in their robe hanging out with the girls, then that's what I'm going to do. So I would say the biggest challenge for me is and it doesn't happen very often, maybe 10% of the weddings that I shoot, but every once in a while I'll get that one wedding where it's somebody's just not quite as excited about photos, and so they don't make the time for it, or I can't push them enough, along fast enough to do it. So
what about family members who bring their own camera and try and get in your shot, or maybe even their own flash, which can screw things up? Do you have many problems with that?
I don't. And I don't really mind family members coming up. So here's the thing. Weddings are great marketing opportunities, and when I say they're great marketing opportunities, a family member or somebody that has a camera, that can be an excellent referral source, because that person appreciates photography. They love photography. They obviously want to shoot a nice photo of themselves or for themselves. And so when they have a friend getting married, guess what they're going to say? If you were nice to that person, they're going to say, "Oh, I met this really great photographer that shot my cousin's wedding. You ought to contact them." So it's funny. I'm kind of reversed in a lot. I know our industry tends to not like the Uncle Bobs and and Aunt Janes that have their fancy camera. I kind of look at it as those people are when I see them, I will go up to them at a wedding and I will try to start up a relationship or a conversation with them. Now, most of them, they know that, that photographers think bad about them. They know that that they're the Uncle Bob, and so it's really funny. Sometimes I'll go up to them and I'll start talking to them, and I can tell at first they're almost scared, like, "Oh no, he's going to tell me to put my camera away." And I'll tell them, I'll say, "Hey, I'm excited you're here. That's a great camera you have there. I love the the T3i, and let me know if you have any questions, or if you need help using your camera, we can talk later on." And I think it's great to start those relationships. So now when it comes to family photos, what I tend to do is I'll just kind of announce to everybody. I'll say, "Hey guys, we're gonna do some family photos. I'm gonna grab a few shots. I want everyone looking at my camera," because if you don't say that, what happens? They're looking at their friend's camera, right? It doesn't make any sense to me, but that's, for whatever reason, that's what they do. And so I'll say, look at my camera, and then I'll tell if I see other people shooting and that they're going to take up time, I'll tell them to stand right next to me, and I'll shoot, and I'll say, okay, look at their camera. All right, good, we got it. Okay, next group, let's, and I'll try to hurry that process along. But I really don't have a problem with it. Now I know I've had a few people stand in front of an aisle. I've had a flash go off here or there, but I've never, it's never nothing destroyed a wedding or,
Okay.
I mean, it's not.
And I've been on the other side too, and run into some. I've never had. I try to go to as few weddings as possible, but I have been to a few, and I brought my camera not to take many shots, but mainly of like other friends that are there. So none of the main stuff. But I've told the bride and groom, hey, look, if your photographers die on the way to the thing, I'm going home because I'm not your wedding photographer.
You're right.
But so when they came up and talked to me, they were very nice. And I probably gave the same feed that you're talking about, but my vibe back to them was, hey, I know you're crazy busy. This is a stressful day for you as a photographer. I don't want to take up too much of your time. I will stay out of your way, and hopefully most people will do this. I'll stay out of your way, and if you want to talk to me, that's fine, but I know that you're busy and you got a lot to do, so I'm trying to be respectful of your time. Now, that's a great approach, though, that you're saying, because that's the same thing you just said happened to me. When I walked away from that wedding, I thought those two photographers, there was a husband and wife team, I thought they were fantastic. And I've talked about them a number of times and even given their name out to other people, because I am not going to go do a wedding. So I have said, hey, look at these people. Talk to Jenny. She used them as wedding photographers. Go talk to them. That's great.
Yeah. No, exactly. And a lot of times if you have a camera, guess who's going to be coming up to you and asking to shoot their wedding? It's going to be your friends. They're going to say, hey, Mike, I know you have a really nice camera. Yeah. Can you shoot our wedding? And so you're going to be that person that's going to say, oh, I'm sorry, just like you did. I'm sorry, I'm not going to do it, but I know somebody that can. And so, yeah, definitely, as photographers, look at those relationships as opportunities for referrals in the future.
But it also sounds like you're taking as much command as you can of the wedding process, and especially the shooting, where, go here, we're going to take these photos, and you move out of the way, we're going to do the next one. And there's a question from chat. Let me see if I can get the name. Danelli? How do you say that name again? Daniela. She asked, do you have any go-to poses? Like, I want to make sure I get these shots, and then maybe you have some other, ones that are different for every wedding, but like your key shots.
It's funny. I would say one of the things that I want to work on most going into the fall of this year, because my wedding season's turning on basically this week with a Friday, Saturday wedding. So one of the things I want to work on most is kind of coming up with maybe new go-to poses, I guess you could say. But I love as much natural interaction as possible. So I'm not the kind of person that's going to go up and adjust fingers or adjust the chin a little bit or things like that. I try to go for that more natural feel and look. Some of the things I like to do is just come up with little prompts. So if you ever see anyone on my website or on my Facebook page, if a couple kind of laughing at each other, it's typically because I've done some kind of prompt. So like one, for example, I'll have couples stand just a little ways apart looking at me, and then I'll ask them to pick a color. Basically, I want them to say the same color or try to get the same color. And you guys have probably heard this before, but basically I'll say, all right, guys, on the count of 3, look at each other and say a color, and let's see if you guys get the same one. And they go, and I'll go 1, 2, 3, and they look at each other, and she says red and he says nude or some weird color, and they start laughing, and or if they get it wrong, they kind of look at each other. Inviting the girl to give the guy a little pinch on the butt if he's not, if he doesn't have a big smiley face or is not having a good time. Another thing that's kind of interesting, Mike, that I love doing is I love bringing a speaker with me to shoots. So engagement shoots and things like that. Just a little bit of music sometimes breaks that silence. Okay. And helps out a lot. So I have my phone. It's a Bluetooth speaker, so there's no cables or anything. It's just run by battery, and I use a JBL Charge is the name of my speaker that I use. And I just connect my phone to it, and I'll either carry it in my bag or wherever. And it's a great way of just kind of breaking up a little bit of silence, having some fun with the girls during bridal shoot, during the bridesmaid shoots, things like that.
Okay. Okay. Let me see if I got more of my questions, but we're never going to make it through my questions, and I want to make sure I get the chat's questions.
Is there quite a few people in there on chat? I can't actually see it.
Yeah, we have a good number out there right now. So let me go back and if guys out in chat, if I do miss your question, just ask it again, because there's 2 players. If you're watching the one I'm watching, it has a small chat window. There is an alternative player that has a bigger video with chat below it that is bigger. So if you have a big monitor, you may want to watch it from there. But if I missed your question, ask it again. So, and this feeds into a question I had. You know, are a lot of your bookings for weddings, and I think you also do other types of photography like senior shooting and that kind of stuff. It is a lot of that coming from word of mouth. And before you answer that, I do want to say, and I'm not going to play it because you might have music, and I got banned from YouTube already once, so I don't know what round 2 of punishment is, and I don't want to find out. But you know, one of the things, if you go to Trevor's website, and we'll have the links in the show notes, both his website, his Facebook page, his F-Stoppers post, and his blog. We have all those links out there. One of the things is you have a video, promotional video on your site, right? And that video, I love that video. That video is awesome. And I love photographers who do a video, a good quality video like yours, and put it on their website. So back to the question from, I think it was Ann. Did I mention the person's name? From Anna. You mentioned earlier on about you getting a lot of bookings from wedding coordinators or wedding planners.
Yep.
You know, now that your business has progressed on, are you still getting a lot of it from word of mouth?
Absolutely. I actually don't pay any marketing dollars into any kind of magazines or websites or anything like that. So it all comes from word of mouth, and that's just kind of how I've appreciated getting business. I love when somebody comes as a word of mouth referral. It's typically, I don't have to sell them on anything. It's they just, hey, I heard you're great, and we want to hire you. How much do you cost, and where do I sign? So they're typically very easy referrals. Now, wedding coordinators is number one. I love doing everything I can for wedding coordinators. Now, there's a couple things I just want to point out with wedding coordinators. One is timeline is so important to them. So I know photographers, sometimes let's say the grand entrance is at 7 o'clock. And let's say sunsets at 7 o'clock, and you're watching the sun go down, and you're shooting photos, and all of a sudden the sky starts to catch fire, and you're just like, this is incredible, I gotta catch this. And you know what, we'll be 15 minutes late, it's not a big deal. Well, guess what, it is a huge deal. It's a huge deal, because guess who's basically pissed off and yelling at the wedding coordinator? It's the kitchen staff, because they're all upset because they have either food getting cold or getting burnt, and they got to get that out to the plates. And so, I mean, and then they're giving the wedding coordinator all that information, and she's being upset, and she doesn't know where to find you guys because you're out in the golf course somewhere or whatever. So I would say the very, very first thing, guys, is if you have a schedule and you're supposed to be back at 7 o'clock, even though you only had 15 minutes to shoot with the couple, even though the sunset is just absolutely looking gorgeous and you just got your lights set up, I don't care what it is, get those people back. The only time that I've ever made an exception to that was we were right next to the clubhouse. The wedding coordinator was outside, and I said, how are we doing on time? Do you think we have 10 more minutes to capture this beautiful sunset? And she said, absolutely, take your time. I'm going to go let the kitchen staff know right now. So, I mean, there's those times where, if the wedding coordinator is there with you, maybe you can squeeze in a few extra minutes, but that's the number one thing, is make sure to be on time. And the other thing is work as a team. I mean, if it's a videographer that's there with you, if there's a wedding coordinator, if it's a DJ, make sure that you work as a team with everybody, because it makes, again, the wedding coordinator's job much, much easier. And then the third thing is dress nicely. And I say that, and it
is a wedding.
I mean, I cringe, but, and guys, I mean, if you followed me on Facebook for a while, you'll know that in the past I used to wear a vest, and I had jeans and some white shoes. And I look back on those, and I think, man, I lost a lot of business because of it. And I know it sounds silly, but I finally, one time, I sat down with a wedding coordinator, a very high-end wedding coordinator out in Manhattan Beach, California, and she basically said, Trevor, she said, I want to send you more business, but I can't the way you're dressed. And you know what? It was a slap in my face. It totally was. And I thought, I walked away from there going, you know what? Maybe I don't want to do business with her. I kind of was prideful about it. But the more I thought about it, I thought, you know what? In reality, I don't want to be the least dressed person at the wedding, because I'm typically behind the bride and groom. I'm typically the one in the middle of the aisle. I'm typically the one that's, finding corners to shoot from. I'm usually the one that's moving around and drawing attention to myself, or at least I'm not trying to, but people see movement out of the corner of their eye and they're looking. So I've seen so many people show up to weddings, and they got t-shirts or they got jeans on, they got their Nike shoes or whatever. I understand being comfortable, and I understand being an artist. That's why I wore white shoes in the past, and I thought I was an amazing artist that was standing out from the crowd. But I got to tell photographers, dress nicely, wear that tie, guys, wear the slacks, wear the nice shiny shoes.
It's nice that she told you, because otherwise you wouldn't. You may not have known how. No, just don't know how long you would have gone without knowing that. And then at least you had the decision where you could have decided, no, I'm going to stay rough looking, or maybe you weren't rough looking. You were still good looking, but not.
Yeah.
But compared to the wedding, at a wedding you weren't. So
Yeah.
you at least had the opportunity to make the decision, and knowing that it cost you some business.
Well, and I think it depends on the kind of weddings you want too. I mean, maybe if I'm shooting, if I'm in Nebraska and I'm shooting farm weddings all the time, then maybe I can understand wearing pants or a nice pair of pants or something like that. But I'll tell you, the caliber of weddings I've shot, it's gone up from $15,000-$20,000 weddings to now I'm shooting $200,000-$300,000 weddings.
Wow.
These people that are just dropping huge budgets, and I don't know how they do it. I mean, I got 5 kids. There's no way they're gonna get big weddings like that. But man, there's just no way. I think if they saw me on my Facebook page or on my website. Oh, and by the way, you brought up the promo video.
Yeah.
That promo video has been huge for me. And I hate to even call attention to it. If you look at the very end of the promo video when I'm shooting the wedding couple, I look like a disaster. I have my shirt untucked. Oh, please don't. I look like a disaster. My shirt untucked. There's jeans. I had like a white shirt hanging out. I look terrible. And that's the one thing that wedding video was done about 2.5 years ago. And I look back at that, and that's the one thing I would love to redo, is that portion of it, if nothing else. But and I apologize for continually talking, but let me just mention one more thing that's on my mind here. About that promo video. That was the best money I've ever spent on marketing. So I said that I haven't put any money towards marketing like magazines and stuff. But the promo video is huge. So if you don't do a promo video, I would do it because it allows people to get to know who you are.
For me, at least, I don't know what it does for other people, but what it does for me is, there's a lot of great looking websites out there. And I go to your website and I look through your photos, and we streamed some of them earlier. We'll probably do a few more later. And and I would encourage people, remember, when we're streaming them, they're decreased in quality. Go to his website and look at them there, where you can see the true quality. And as I'm looking through them, I get goosebumps. They're good. They're just outstanding. But there's a lot of good wedding photographers out there. What the video did for me is it gave me more of a personal connection to you. Even though, I'm not talking to you, but while watching the video of you, it made more personal connection with you. And if I was shopping for a wedding photographer and I had 2 sites, one without the video and one with the video, and the quality of work was pretty much the same, I would go with you because now I feel more of a connection with you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I absolutely agree with you. Wholeheartedly. And I would say people have actually brought that video up when I'm shooting. Like, I've gone into a bridal suite and I'll be shooting pictures of the bride getting ready, and a bridesmaid will say, you know what, I love Thai food as well. And I'm like, what? She goes, I saw your video, your promo video. The bride showed us your promo video. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. I love Thai food and Mexican food. I mean, those little things. Or people ask me about my kids, they'll be like, I can't believe you have 5 kids. And so the photography is not, I mean, yes, it is about the pictures. I agree. Yes, there's art, everything else. But there's so much more to it. And people hire us not because of, like you were saying, if they see great photos. In fact, I hate to say this out loud, but we've all said this before. People don't know the difference between a good, great, and excellent photo. And so what they're looking for is really somebody who they feel like comfortable having on their wedding day, and they don't have fear that you're not going to show up, that you're going to have a bad relationship with them or whatever. So if you can get beyond that fear by letting them see a piece of you, and that video is a great way to do it, then I think it helps a ton. So yeah,
I think it makes you feel more comfortable. Yeah.
Absolutely.
There are 2 things that have been posted out in chat. One has been mentioned twice. The Ferris wheel image, which I did see come up, is just an amazing shot. Danielle brought that up. And then another question came up about wanted to hear about your system for lighting, specifically on-camera flash exposure, and how you achieve consistency there. Yeah.
Okay. So the Ferris wheel shot is kind of a fun one. Honestly, guys, that was a shot in the dark. It was basically I saw the Ferris wheel. I told a couple. I said, hey, let's go on this Ferris wheel. Let's go up and see if we can get some shots. Now, when we did it, I had to talk the carny into letting me even get the booth right next to them. It's really funny. Even when you're in line, they sort you like in odd numbers or whatever, I guess to even out the weight of it. Anyhow, I'm diverging. Basically, the shot was I just had them put a speed light right down in their lap, and I shot from the other side, or the other what do you call those, cabin, or Mike, Tim, what do you guys think? What do you call those things?
A pod.
Pod.
Yeah.
There you go. I shot from the other pod. Now, what happened was the shot. It turned out great. I did have to go in and bring a little bit more brightness onto the body, onto them. They're in the raw image didn't have as much light on them because I wasn't shooting a flash directly at them. So basically, the light that was hitting them was going up, hitting the roof pod of them, which was I think a blue color if I remember correctly, and kind of coming back down. So I had to adjust a little bit of the white balance temperature and the exposure on them. But yeah, it was a fun one and was unplanned, but it worked out just absolutely fantastic. So I was happy for that. And then what was the other question? Oh, as far as lighting goes,
Yes.
so when I shoot, my favorite tools for lighting are my speed lights. I have the Speedlight 600, the RT EX edition. The 600s are fabulous. In fact, here I got them right here. I'll show you something kind of cool here.
These are Canons, right? What?
Yeah, these are Canons. I don't think Nikon's come out with this system yet, but I don't doubt that they'll probably come out with it very, very soon because it's just so fabulous. Basically, what the way these work is, and by the way, I just have the red tape to just separate them so I know, like from a distance, oh, that's my A, that's my B, that's my C. Okay. This one actually I took it off. It used to have yellow tape, and the other one has blue. But what's so great about these? Oh, that's awesome. Hold on one second. I took my batteries out of that one here. Let me grab a different one. So I have 3 of these because basically once you buy one, you have to have 2 because the reason is they speak to each other. And so let me turn this on and I'll just show you guys how this works. Now I know it's gonna be hard to see this, but do you see that little red light right there? And it says.
Hold on a second. Let me bring you in full, so everybody.
And can... You know what? The light is probably gonna be there. You can maybe see it there.
All right, I got you as full screen now.
Okay, well there's a red light on top, and then the flash says master. Okay, now I can change that to whatever I want. But the great thing is watch how wonderful this is. A lot of times people will have issues where they're trying to connect their flashes, like they're using pocket wizards or whatever, and things aren't firing just right. Well, the 600s, when I turn this on, let me switch this. Okay, you see right here, it doesn't have anything. There's one red light here and there's nothing here.
Right, the link is not lit up.
Watch as I cycle through this and I go to slave, and you see how they both turn green immediately?
Yeah.
Now, once I see that, I immediately know, okay, these two are communicating with each other. So every time this fires, or anytime I want this to fire, this one's going to fire as well. I can also tell this flash, hey, I want you just to trigger this one, but I don't want you to actually fire at all. So I just want you to act as a trigger. So now if I have these two and I have maybe even a third one that I'm using and I can place all around, this has been my favorite kind of go-to for off-camera flash, just because it's so easy and portable, and I don't have to worry about setting up triggers and all kinds of craziness. Now I have CyberSync triggers that I use for my alien bees when I want to use those, and I also have radio poppers that I use as well. But honestly, when I have to just, with those, I got to worry about batteries for everything, and make, if the flash doesn't fire, I got to figure out, is it the flash, is it the trigger, what's not working? So I found these 600s to be just a really valuable investment. So I love those.
Yeah, I wish Nikon would come, because they have the radio transmitter and receiver built into them, the Canon. I wish Nikon would come up with that.
Yeah, well, exactly. I'm glad you mentioned the word radio, because that's exactly the difference. A lot of people will say, oh, yeah, well, that's just optical. Well, the great thing about these now is, like you said, it's radio. So I can put these around the corner, for example, where they're not even looking at each other, and I can still fire flashes. So
it's not having to use the infrared transmitter. It's actually using like a pocket wizard, a radio transmitter, right?
Exactly. Whereas if before this you had to have, some kind of infrared or optical, something that the flash can see. I love putting these in softboxes. So Westcott makes a Westcott Apollo softbox, and they even have one that's a 50-inch. Now I wouldn't necessarily recommend the 50-inch because it is a massive beast, and it's really hard to move around on wedding days. But my goodness, one strobe, one Canon Speedlight inside that 50-inch softbox, put nice and close to a bride, it creates just beautiful, absolutely gorgeous, smooth light. So there's an article on f-stoppers that I wrote probably 8 months ago where I showed some images with a bride with that 50-inch softbox, and it's insane. So I just got one little clarification on the 50-inch softbox. It has not been the best quality. and I'm going to talk to Westcott about it and see what they've done to improve it. Mine, it's torn on the edges a little bit, things like that. So
the quality of light coming out's okay, but the quality of the material is not that good.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Now they have another one. I think it's a 28-inch Apollo softbox. I have that one as well, and that one's been so far held up pretty well. So I don't know. Maybe I just got a limit on the 50-inch, but it's called the Apollo Mega, I think is what it's called. Yeah, and it's amazing. One speed light, and it's amazing the kind of light you can get out of those big softboxes.
Okay, and we kind of touched on it earlier, and there was a question out in chat about your editing. So, what is your editing? You don't have to go into great detail, but your editing process. Do you use Lightroom, Photoshop, something else?
Yep, I use 3 programs, and people might call me crazy. I could probably minimize this down a little bit, but I use 3 programs. The first one is Photomechanic. Mm-hmm. So I use Photomechanic to ingest all my images into the computer. And what's so great about Photomechanic is I can ingest 3 or 4 cards at one time. So as many card readers as I have plugged into my computer is however many cards I can start importing at one time. Yeah, so it makes it so when I get home from a wedding, I like to ingest my cards that very night and back them up. And so being able to put 3 cards in and saying, okay, I'm going to download these 3, 16 gig or 32 gigabyte cards. I'm going to go upstairs, I'm going to go read a book and come back in 30 minutes. It makes it really nice. I don't have to keep switching out cards.
You can't do that in Lightroom. Yeah, you'd have to do one at a time. Yeah.
Yeah, not yet. And so I love that. And then of course I tell Photomechanic as well, not only to ingest and put on the computer, but then I back it up to a hard drive at the same time. So it does that. Now, the other thing I like about Photomechanic is I use it for all my culling. So have you guys used Photomechanic before?
No.
Have you had it?
Nope. Hold on a second. There's something going on with the live stream. We're still doing good.
Yeah. Well,
there it goes.
I'll hang tight.
It's back. There's a slight pause there. I don't know what happened.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yep. Well, I was just going to say, so Photomechanic, I heard about Photomechanic actually, I can't remember who it was, but somebody had mentioned it with regards to sports photographers. So the guys that are shooting down on the football field, for example, which by the way, I had a chance to go do that a couple weeks ago. It was an amazing experience. So, but those guys that are shooting down on the football field, they come in at halftime, they download their photos in a hurry, and then they basically have to get them up to the wire as quickly as they can. And the way they do that is they use Photomechanic, and they can go through the photos just like, as quickly as you can press the arrow key to the next photo, it's popping up full resolution. You can tell if those eyelashes are in focus or not. Whereas Lightroom, when you press the arrow key to go to the next photo, have you guys all seen that little thing at the bottom? It says loading.
Right, it's going to render it.
Yeah, and it might only take a second or a half second, but that time, if you're looking through 1,000, 2,000 photos, it adds up, and it's almost this laggy feeling. And so I use Photomechanic. I do all my culling through Photomechanic, and culling meaning I pick out my favorite photos. So I just kind of go through, and it's as quickly as I'm hitting that arrow button, and I hit T for tagged, or Trevor if you want. No, I'm just kidding. No, it's T for tagged. So I'm arrowing, and I hit T for tagged. If I see one I like, I hit it T, just as quickly as I'm going through them. And I went from culling weddings that took 2 to 3 hours to go through all my photos, so now I can cull a whole wedding in about 20 minutes.
And how many photos are you going through in 20 minutes?
Usually about 3,000.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine doing that in Lightroom.
Yeah, no, it's impossible. And I haven't done the math, but the reason I say about 20 minutes is sometimes, I don't know if you guys have ever heard of a technique called the Pomodoro technique. But Pomodoro technique is basically you work 20 minutes and then you take 5 minutes off, and then you work 20 minutes and you take 5 minutes off. And I've done that quite a bit. And so I've pushed myself, and I've said, okay, during this Pomodoro technique, I'm gonna cull through this wedding. And so that's why I've known.
So how much does Photomechanic cost?
I think it's like $150. Okay. Now, if you're just a portrait shooter or a hobby shooter and you don't shoot a whole lot of photos, I don't know if it would necessarily be worth it. But if you're doing, if you're culling, a couple thousand photos a week or 1,000 photos a week or whatever, and by the way, you can download the trial version. It's I think you get 14 days to try it out. And again, I hate to keep plugging f-stoppers, but there is an article on f-stoppers that I actually show a video of how I use Photomechanic, and then how I import those photos, the ones that I picked, how I bring them into Lightroom. So you can go check that out as well and see if that's of interest to you.
No, that sounds great. If you are a high-volume shooter, like a wedding shooter, or maybe even sports, some different sports, that would probably be well worth the money, because Lightroom is great, but it does have some. It's not going to be as fast. You're only going to be able to download one card to start, and then it's not going to be as fast to go through them. So you started Photomechanic, and then What do you?
Then I bring it into Lightroom, and see and the Lightroom is magic. I mean, it is an amazing program when it comes to actually fixing and cataloging our photos and that kind of stuff. So Lightroom is definitely where I do 90% of the work after I brought them in. I do my exposure adjustments. I have a booster that I apply to all my photos that kind of gives it that extra punch of contrast and vibrance and things like that. So I do all the fixing any white balance and exposure in Lightroom. And then once I've done that, I export those out, and I call that just my JPEGs, my fixed JPEGs is what I call them in my folder. So I save those. Once I have those fixed JPEGs, I have no problem erasing my raw files. Now I don't usually, yeah, I know, crazy, right?
That's
I know,
scary.
But here's the thing: I typically won't do it like right away. But what I mean by that is 3 or 6 months from now, I'll go back in my hard drives and I'll delete my raw files. And the reason is because I have those fixed JPEGs. Now, when I say that, that means that my exposure is correct, my white balance is correct, and so if I ever need to go and do something else to those files, I can just pull up one of those fixed JPEGs and I'm fine. Now, again, it's just my method. I don't necessarily recommend people just deleting raw files like crazy, but I've just found that I was going through so many hard drives, just filling them up like crazy with raw files, that I finally had to find a way of saying, okay, these are my JPEGs, I'm going to stick with these. All right, so once I have those JPEGs out, then what I'll do is I'll actually take those photos and I'll run them through Photoshop. So this is where I mentioned the 3 programs, Photomechanic, Lightroom, and Photoshop. In Photoshop, I run it through that, and I do a batch process. And using the batch process, I have an action set up. And that action, it adds a little bit of tone or color shift to my photos, just to kind of make it a little bit different than right out of the camera. It's not tremendous. I don't like to be overly, I don't like my photos to be overly kind of crazy or too trendy or anything like that. I just kind of like to be classic, but just a little bit of a shift to the colors. And then what it does is it applies a skin smoothing. And the skin smoothing is, I do it through Portraiture.
Okay.
So I don't know if anyone's ever used Portraiture out there, but it's an amazing program as well. And I do just a very, very light touch of skin smoothing. And again, I'm going to hear people, cry foul here, but I do it on every single one of the photos. So every single photo goes through just a slight skin smoothing and Portraiture, and then that color shift, and that just kind of, I've heard people say, hey Trevor, how do you get that softness but crispness to your photos? And I would say the softness comes from Portraiture and the crispness comes from the Lightroom, doing some sharpening and stuff in there.
Okay. All right, and I think somebody said I just got nauseous. They're about 35 seconds behind us. I guess it's because of the deleting of the raw files. Now, you said going back one step though, because you back up when it come off the card, right?
I do.
And that is the raw file. Do you delete the backup raw file also?
Eventually, I will.
Okay.
Eventually. Now, again, it sounds crazy, and I don't do it like right away. But about 6 months down the road or so, when I'm just I'll spend an afternoon when I'm off, and I'll just kind of go through. I guess maybe sometime those raw files can benefit me, but.
I guess the challenge for a lot of wedding photographers and in sports, I like to throw sports in there too, because those are the two. I'm sure there's others. And in sports there's a wide variety. I have shot competitive cheerleading, which was crazy fast. It's faster than any sport I've ever shot. Competitive cheerleading, and being indoors, it was challenging. So those two fields shoot a lot of images, especially if you're an active shooter, and if you're like I think Trevor is, like I am, you shoot raw, you can chew up hard drive space pretty darn fast. And if you're shooting 20, 30, 40, 50 weddings a year, and you several thousand each wedding, I mean, that adds up pretty fast. So you really got to have a plan on what you're going to do, whether that includes deleting them. I'd make sure you know what you're doing before you delete them.
Yeah. Well, see, and my thing, and just so people understand again correctly, is that I have the JPEG files that I have that I've exported out of Lightroom. They're, I don't resize them at all. They're the high-res JPEGs. The exposure is fixed. The white balance is fixed. So it's basically the best photo that I can get out of the camera as a JPEG. And that's why I can erase that raw. Now, I love shooting. I definitely, I tell people always shoot in raw because it gives you a lot more flexibility in your highlights and your shadows and everything else. But at that point, those raw files, I don't really need them at that point. And so I'm shooting 150,000 to 200,000 photos a year, and I don't need all those raw files taking up so much hard drive space.
Yeah, I think what I would recommend is that until you're sure of yourself, like Trevor is try to find a way where you don't have to delete them. And you know, as you get better with your editing, you know, that's something as you kind of perfect your editing skills, get better at that stuff. The raw file may serve less importance, but I would definitely wait till you know what you're doing before you start deleting those.
Well, and also I think sometimes people will edit something in Lightroom and they might apply like a matte or a film effect or something like that, and then they export those out as the JPEG. So now all you have is the edited JPEG with whatever effect applied to it.
Yeah.
Whereas the difference between that and me is that I'm exporting a JPEG with no, you know, no split toning or some crazy effect to it. I'm just exporting just a pure, nice colored exposure, white balance JPEG. So I think that might be the difference too.
And I don't want to, I preach about this way too often, so I'm just going to say it really quick, is if you're not backing up your files, you are deleting your files. It's just, you don't know when that's going to happen. It's going to be on somebody else's time, on you know, the hard drive's time. Now, going a little bit off of the wedding photography, but you mentioned you have 5 kids, and we got to meet 2 of them, by the way, while you were out during the pre-show. Both of them came in, put the headset on, and say a couple words to us. Actually, I think we had to say, "What's your name?" And they said the name, and I'm sorry I didn't get the name very well, but they're very cute. The 2, I think it was 2 boys who came in and said hi to us. Nobody out in chat got to see this because we weren't publishing at the time, but very cute little boys. But you have 5 children, aging from what to what?
Yep. My kids, they're basically my first 3 are girls, and they're 12. Oh my goodness, this is terrible. 12, 9, and 7.
Okay.
And then my 2 boys are 4 and 2.
Okay.
So my wife and I, we have 5, and the 2 boys that you met, my little boys Cash and Ace are their names, and they actually, it's kind of funny because so I work from home, and they come in my little studio space all the time, and it's really funny whenever they see me chatting on, you know, a video chat with somebody. They'll usually come up and climb on my chair and climb all over me. And I gotta say, I know some parents are kind of like, oh no, people are gonna think I'm unprofessional, or you know, they're gonna know I work from my house or whatever. But I just make it part of my brand. I really don't even mind it. I don't lock my doors and tell my kids to stay outside. I'll tell them that I'm gonna be on a call and to be quiet. But if my little boys decide to walk in my studio and I can hear them, you know, over by the door, or they're playing with their Legos or something, I'll even call them over. If I'm on a call with a wedding coordinator or a couple, I'll say, hey, I want you to meet my boys, and I'll bring them over, and they jump up over on me, and I think it's great. I think people, again, it's just like we were talking about earlier, people get to see you as a person as opposed to just, you know, some business.
Absolutely, yeah. So how do you balance life, you know, 5 children, life with a wedding photographer? Because there's certain times of the year where you're probably crazy shooting on the weekends and then editing during the week or whatever your schedule is. How do you find the balance between the 2?
Yep. You know, the biggest thing is scheduling your time and giving yourself goals. So saying like, hey, for example, I'm like I mentioned earlier with the Pomodoro technique. Hey, I'm gonna bust this out in 2 hours, or do this one in 3 hours, or I'm gonna do this editing, and then tomorrow I'm gonna focus on this. Because I think sometimes as photographers, when we start to lose control of our schedules, when we don't set a schedule, when we don't set goals for ourselves and things like that. So I think that's the #1 thing. Also, don't be afraid of taking weekdays off. I know it's not built into our DNA that we have grown up with, but you know, if we're working Friday and Saturday, then I'm going to take Sunday and Monday off. I mean, yesterday I took the whole day off, and I basically just spent it with my wife, and we went shopping and did some things. So
well, you are the boss.
I am the boss. That's right. I get to take those days off when I want to. Yeah. And speaking of which, my kids every year, I think they get 12 days they can miss school and not like be in trouble with the you know, the school board or whatever, or maybe it's 10 days. But either way, we push it to the absolute max. We start getting the letters that say your kid has been absent from school far too often, and that's only because we take them out of school on a weekday and we'll go down to Mexico. It's about a 3-hour drive from where I'm at, so we'll go down to Mexico and spend some time on the beach for a couple days, or we'll go to Disneyland or whatever. I'm not afraid of taking those weekdays and using them as vacation days. So, you know, those 2 things, I think setting a schedule for yourself and making sure that you actually are taking weekdays off because you are working the weekends. Now, I got to say, it can be tough on the wedding season. You know, if I'm working Friday, Saturdays and stuff, it can be tough. The one day I do give myself is Sunday. I try not to take weddings on Sunday unless it's like a January or February and I don't have any other weddings going on and somebody wants to hire me on a Sunday, then I might take it. You know, my wife and I will talk about it. But if it's during a wedding season, I typically don't work on Sundays. And when I'm not working on Sundays, I also don't do engagement session on Sundays. So Sundays is kind of like my day for my family as well. So.
Okay. And I know we're actually getting close to the hour, and the questions are starting to flow through chat. So what I'm going to do is, instead of going through my list of questions, I just want to hit on one. And I told you this in an email, Trevor. There's no way we're going to get through everything because you do so much. There's no way we can do it in one show. So hopefully we can have you back at some point to go over more stuff.
I'd be happy to.
But we'll have this in the show notes. Trevor, you post a lot over at F-Stoppers. Can you just give us a brief? What is F-Stoppers, and how'd you get involved in posting over there?
Yeah, so F-Stoppers, for those who haven't visited, F-Stoppers it's a great blog. Basically, they were built originally around the concept of being able to show a lot of behind-the-scenes videos for photographers made by photographers. So it would be showing photographers in their studio, for example, working. And I loved it just as a reader. I would go there all the time, and I learned so much. Watching other photographers work inside their studio. And so what happened was they were asking for some writers, and I wrote them a quick email and said, hey, I would be interested. I love helping the photography community, so I'm a terrible writer, but if I can help, I would love to be able to help. And luckily they brought me on board. There's about 13 or 15 of us. It kind of changes here and there. We lose a few, we gain a few every once in a while. But it's a great opportunity for me, and what I do over there is basically I have a goal of being able to do 2 articles a week. Sometimes it might just be finding something that's of interesting or news. Maybe it's on another blog already, and I might just kind of paraphrase it and say, hey, check this out. Mike is doing some amazing work with jpeg2RAW. He has a show going on. You can go visit more of his information over here and have some information that goes to your website, for example. Other times I might write an article just from my heart, from my mind, and just try to come up with something that, like the photo mechanic, or there's one about booster shot, which is that thing that I use in Lightroom to kind of give my colors an extra vibrance and stuff. So I might just, something that I've learned that I want to share with everyone else. I'll write an article about it and share it there, and it's a great resource. So if you haven't yet checked it out, definitely go over there.
And we'll do, like I said, a link to your post, because you have a lot of great ones. You have one on, I think it's 9.5 ways not, let's see, how do I get 9.5 ways not to get corrupted files on your compact flash or something like that. You just did one today on Lightroom 5.2. You had one on how, I think it's tips for a second shooter, which we didn't have a chance to go over. I wanted to ask you some questions on that, but you have one on that. You have, I mentioned this in a pre-show. I was going down the list of all the stuff you had wrote about, and some great articles, and I got to the bottom and said, wow, that was really good. And then I realized, no, that's just page 1. There's there's at least 9 of the pages. I think I saw a 9 down there. It may have been even more than that. But, a lot of great articles. So go check out his articles. There's a lot of good stuff there. No matter if you're a wedding photographer or not a wedding photographer, there's a lot of good stuff that applies to photography in general.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. I think I have about 120 articles or something posted there. I've been writing for about a year. And by the way, if there's anyone out there that would be interested in stuff like that, push yourself, stretch yourself. Like I said, I've always been a terrible writer. I've tried to get a lot better over the last year. And I felt like I have got a lot better, but it was only because I pushed myself to do it. So don't feel like you need to, be perfect at something before you try to incorporate it into your life. Instead, go after it, and you'll find that you'll get better and better over time. And go ahead. Well,
not only are you giving back to the community and helping people out, but it does give you something too, some SEO back to your website too.
It definitely does. It gives me a little bit of SEO. It's gotten me more Facebook fans and more exposure, and also I've had some great conversations with people. I mean, I don't know if you guys know Sal Sincata, but him and I were talking the other day. I called him up on his phone because he had questions about an article. So we were talking for about a half hour. So I mean, I've had, Mike, you've had this experience where you've got to meet some amazing photographers with your show here. And I would just encourage people, push yourself to go out there and get to know people, and you'll find that it opens a lot of doors.
Yep. And this is a question we get quite often. Is about prices, and I think you list your prices. I'm going to a question here in chat. I know you list your prices on your website, right, for the weddings, at least a little bit, some of it.
Yeah, I list my first price. So I list starting from $42.50 is what I put on there.
And a question that they had out in chat, Christina Louise, Trevor, when you were first starting out, how was your experience when it was time to raise your prices? I'm trying to do this, but so far I get more, are you crazy looks from the bookings. So I think that's a lot of people. Some people are so out of touch with what a wedding photographer costs. You tell them $500, and they think you're crazy for $500. But nobody can live shooting $500 weddings. I mean, if you're trying to do this like you professionally, supporting I don't know if your wife works, but a family, $500 a wedding, you're going to have to do a lot of weddings to live off of that money. So $500 is just crazy. But some people look at you like that's too much. So like what Christina here is saying is, how does she start raising her prices and deal with people who are saying that's too much?
Yeah, no, a couple things I would say. One, make sure, and I tell people that go to my workshops, because I've taught a lot of workshops around the country, and in fact, even in Mexico and stuff. People who go to my workshops, I tell them it's basically, one, you got to make sure you're not like 10-cent sushi. I love sushi, but I would never go to a restaurant that was advertising 10-cent sushi, because one, I would be scared, and I think as wedding photographers, if we are advertising prices that are too low, people aren't going to even inquire with us because they're scared. So if we say, "Wow, I don't get it. My prices are only $1,000 and I'm like getting no inquiries," it might just be because your prices are too low. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Now, as far as raising prices go, you are going to always have those people, that say, "Oh, but you did my friend's wedding a year ago for, XYZ for $1,000. Now you want $2,500? What's the deal?" You kind of just have to let it go. I mean, you got to realize, you know what, you're not going to be able to suit everybody. It's almost like if somebody walked onto a Lexus dealership, but they had a Hyundai budget, of course they're going to be surprised. But the Lexus dealership is not going to say, "Oh, well, hold on a second. Let's see if we can try to negotiate something and see if we can work this out. And your $20,000, we're gonna see what kind of car we can buy on our lot that averages $60,000." I mean, they're just not going to do it. They're basically going to say, "Oh, the Hyundai dealership is down the road." So that's kind of where I've gotten to the point in my businesses. I know that I can't help everybody. I got an inquiry just the other day that they were asking me if I could do their wedding for $1,000. And as much as I would love to do their wedding, and I hope someday that I'm independently financially free, maybe Mike, you can help me out there. But I hope that someday I have plenty of money sitting in the bank, and I'm living off municipal bond income, and I can just shoot weddings just because I love shooting them. I would love to be able to do that, but unfortunately I can't right now. So I would say two things. One, don't let those couple inquiries that come in, and unfortunately, you can't do it because it's so low. Don't let that get you down and think that, "Oh my goodness, if my prices were just lower, maybe I could have done it." Two, make sure that when you do raise your prices or you do a pricing guide, share it with those wedding coordinators or those planners or even your family or your friends that you care about, because you want them to be aware of what your pricing are, so that when they do refer you out, they're not saying, "Oh yeah, you got to contact my friend, she's really cheap," because that's not the word that you want to use to describe you. And three, what was the third thing I had on my mind? Well, shucks, I'll have to save that for the next show because I can't remember.
That's all right.
I lost my train of thought.
That's all right. Then another question was, what is your turnaround time? So how fast can you turn around a wedding?
I can turn around a wedding. It takes me about 2 to 3 days of just kind of concentrating, focusing on something. Honestly, if I really buckled down and just did it, I could do it in about 8 hours. But usually it takes me about 2 to 3 days. I might do a couple hours today, a couple hours tomorrow, a couple hours the next day.
So wait, you go and shoot several thousand images at a wedding, and then the bride a couple of days later, 2-3 days later, is seeing the images? Well, she's still on the honeymoon, probably. She's still on the honeymoon.
Yeah, I was going to say, here's the difference. I can turn it around in about 3 days, but I usually don't show it till about 10 days out.
Okay.
So if I did it, if I was on top of my game and I got home and I took my Sunday and my Monday off and I decided, okay, Tuesday I'm going to go through this, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I probably am not sharing with those images with that bride, even if I'm done with them. I know it sounds evil, right? We need that evil background music right now.
Well, she's still on her honeymoon, so there's no problem waiting.
She might be on her honeymoon. Even if she wasn't on her honeymoon, I still wouldn't share them. And the only reason I say that is, again, guys, this sounds terrible, and there might even be photographers watching this whose weddings I've shot, because I shoot quite a few photographer weddings every year, but I will hold those images back just a few more days because it's a perception thing, and I don't mean to sound like I'm trying to lie or anything like that. I won't. They don't know that they're done, but people don't. If you turn your images around the next day and give it to somebody, what are they thinking? I don't think this person spent enough time on these images. I don't think they edited enough. And so they're looking for those, those little minute details that maybe you missed out on. And so I usually turn around my images in about it's about 14 days. Is typically when I deliver them to the bride. My contract says 30 though.
Okay. Okay. Another question somebody had, and this goes with you had said you shoot about 150,000 images or so a year. And this wasn't their question. And I should also mention the $500 for a wedding was a number I threw out. It's not what the question was. They didn't give an amount. It was asking a question. But with shooting that much, do you have to send your gear off to be cleaned or checked or every so often, maybe after wedding season's over? Do you do something like that, or do you just do it when you feel like you need to?
No, absolutely. I will. I have these lens wipes, and I always clean down my lenses and stuff like that. But as far as like sensors and things go, I typically am pretty good about making sure that I change my lenses, not in a dusty environment and things like that. That being said, I mean, you're bound to get some dust on it. I will use a rocket blower to clean my sensor out at times.
You have an article on that, the best $8. Yes, that's one of my favorite pieces of gear too.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's $8 and it keeps a lot of things clean. Yeah. But yeah, there are times that I do need to send my gear in. I'm a member of Canon Professional Services, so with Canon Professional Services, I get goodness, I wanted to say 2, but I actually think it's more than that now. I think it's 5 cleanings every year, so I can send my camera gear into them. I just got to pay the shipping, and they'll clean it and send it back. I also at WPPI every year in Las Vegas, I always drop my gear off at Canon and have them clean it there. Okay. And then one other thing is, sometimes I'll do like for example, I shoot with the Canon 5D Mark III, but I have a Canon 5D Mark II, and I knew that the Canon 5D Mark II had about 200,000 clicks on the shutter, so it was already quite a few. Well, I wasn't about to wait for that shutter to go bad on me, and so I sent it in and paid the $300 and just did some preventative, maintenance to it and had them replace the shutter on it. So that's my backup camera, so it's just as good as my regular camera, and I want to make sure that it's good to go when I need to use it. So that's one thing I would encourage people to is not only keep them clean, but just if you have to do some of that maintenance work, get that done as well.
Okay, and we're past an hour, so I'm going to do one more, not a question, but a question. One more question, and we'll close with that one, and then we'll have a few minutes of post show. And somebody out in chat mentioned that my wife went to one of your workshops, and they would love to go too. So you're doing workshops, and not just in Arizona. You're doing workshops in Australia, and I think you're trying to do one in Mexico. And don't you have another one coming up in Boston or something like that? Or you just did one in Boston?
Yeah. I just did one in Boston. I've been over in Australia. I spent 23 days over there teaching, and that was really neat. Let's see. Yeah, I've been to Cancun, been all over. But
so tell us a little bit about the workshop.
Yeah, well, as far as the workshops go, I have 2 coming up, but I got to say they're workshops that I'm doing with people, so they're not like my full experience. So my full experience is typically 2 days, and I go over everything from getting deep into your camera and learning some really cool techniques that some of us don't know about, to editing, to lighting, using off-camera flash and all that kind of stuff. So I have some little editing secrets that I show people on how to speed things up, stuff like that. So that's kind of my two full day experience. And I don't have another one on the calendar yet, but I'm planning on doing one in Arizona, probably November 15th and 16th, and then another one in New York. December 5th and 6th or 4th and 5th. I think I'm gonna go out there for a wedding December 7th, so I'll probably do one then. Okay. So but those haven't been officially announced. But I have one in San Diego coming up October 6th and 7th that I'm doing with a gentleman by the name of Chad de Blasio, a photographer, and also Stacy Childers. And I got to say, if you want pictures for if you're trying to build a portfolio, this workshop is going to be one of the best because we're having a number of shoots. We have 3 professionally stylized shoots with gorgeous models and hair and dresses and everything, along with the teaching. So that one's going to be a really good one. If anyone was interested, hit me up on my Facebook page, or maybe we can post the information on your site if you'd like, Mike.
Absolutely, yeah.
And then there's one more I'll just mention. I'm doing one in Marfa, Texas with a good buddy of mine, Clayton Austin. Clayton is a photographer out in Austin, Texas, an amazing, amazing photographer. And so we're doing a workshop in Marfa, Texas, and I can't remember the dates on that. It's in November, but I don't remember the exact dates.
Now, are these? I had your website pulled up, and I see Are they all
Yeah, it's
listed
not
there?
listed there.
Okay.
No, you know what? I'll go. I'll put them on there tonight.
Well,
I haven't
no,
listed.
just whenever. If you will let me know when you do that, I'll post something on our Facebook page
Cool.
and see what we can do there. Okay, let me change us back to the main shot here. There we go. Okay. Well, Trevor, thank you for coming out. Thank you guys out there in chat. There's been a lot of people who were saying here toward the end that they want you to come out to their area and do workshops out there.
Yeah, I
know Nikki was saying come out to the East Coast. Well, he just did one in Boston. That's I guess the East Coast. I don't know where exactly Nikki lives. I live in the Atlanta area.
Ohio is not exactly East Coast, Nikki.
Is that where Nikki lives in Ohio? Yeah,
that's what she wrote in chat.
Yeah, that's not necessarily East Coast. So, but Trevor, thank you for coming out and spending some time with us. I'm glad I got to meet two of your boys too. That was a lot of fun in the pre-show, and we definitely did not. I think we made it halfway through my questions. Although Chad had a lot of great questions that kind of fed into what I was going to ask anyway. So if we didn't get your questions answered, Trevor is a member now of our Facebook group, so you can go there or on his Facebook page. He has a Facebook page, which is let me pull it up here.
It's funny. My Facebook page, nobody spells my last name right, so it's actually facebook.com/modernphoto.
Yep.
But yeah, Mike, let's just take it into your group there. If it's the jpeg2RAW group. On Facebook, I'd be happy to answer questions in there.
Okay, and we'll have links to your Facebook page, to your F-Stoppers post there. But a lot of great posts. You spend some time going through all those posts, and then your website where you can go and see the full res photos or better res photos. I don't know if they're full res, but better res than what we're able to stream tonight. Because that you have some incredible photos that when you look at them in good resolution like you have on your website, you can't help but get goosebumps as you're going through those things. I mean, they're fantastic.
Oh, thank you so much.
If you're not a member of our Facebook group, it's real easy to find. Just go out to go to the Facebook/groups/jpeg2RAW, and join us. We have a number of admins who will see your request and let you in pretty quickly. We have all over the world. We even have an admin out in Europe. So when we're all sleeping, she's letting people in. So no excuse not to join in. If you didn't get to see the whole show of Trevor, or I saw that we had a couple of pauses from YouTube. YouTube has a lot of potential, and YouTube is great in a lot of ways, but this live streaming thing they're doing now is a little bit new, and there's a couple of pauses. That doesn't affect the recorded version that we're doing here, so if you did come in late or missed anything, the recorded version will be available on just about every way you can get it. For whatever reason, the audio version is still the most popular thing, which you can get on iTunes, you can get on Stitcher Radio, you can get on there's another place, Spreaker. I always say that wrong. You can get it on Spreaker. You can get us on, of course, iTunes with the video. You can get us on YouTube with the video. You can even get us on BlackBerry if anybody still has a BlackBerry with the feeds, Zune, and even on my TiVo. You can get that. Not my TiVo, your TiVo. You can subscribe to the show. So if you missed it, or if you want to go back and look at any of the previous ones we did, you can get them from all those locations. If there's a location that you're looking for that we don't have, that you want me to get it there, just let me know and I'll work on putting it over there. If you're not a member of a Facebook group, or if you are, we have a monthly challenge that we talked about with Trevor early in the show, where you go there, you post it based on whatever topic it is. It has to be taken in the month of the challenge, and then the members of the group get to vote on who they like the most, which images they like the most. The top 3 then go to the admins, and the admins pick a winner. The winner gets their photo as the main group photo for the month, and they win a $25 Amazon gift card, Amazon.com gift card. So it's a lot of fun. We have a lot of good topics. We've been doing it now for over a year. A lot of these things die off after a little while when you start something, but this one has lasted for over a year now. So that's awesome, and I thank everybody who's joined. So I'll go ahead and do our close, and we'll hang out for a couple minutes in the post show. So until next week, keep it raw.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.